everyone. Welcome to the React Universe On Air podcast, brought to you by Callstack, a total software engineering consultancy. I'm Ola. I'll be your host today. I'm a React Native software developer, and I'm joined today by Krzysztof Magiera. Do you want me to call you Krzysztof or Chris? What do you prefer?
Krzysztof is okay. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Krzysztof is okay?
Yeah.
Great. For anyone who doesn't know Krzysztof, he's the co-creator of Software Mansion. By the way, I love the name. It's like, if you want to create a software house, why not a software mansion? It's pretty great.
That was the idea behind the name, actually, to make it like a little bit more fancy than just a house. Yes.
Just a house, yeah. It works. And today's topic is Radon IDE. So this is a great new IDE for working with React Native. Let's start by talking about React Native tooling, because an IDE is a tool. So working with React Native, the tooling is a big challenge. I've been in this space for a few years, and setting up your developer environment is always a tough task. So how do you feel these challenges impact the development process and the final product that is a native app?
Yeah, so the whole issues related to tooling was like the main motivator behind the starting the project in the first place. So we our company runs this State of React Native survey, and we do it every year, and we will have another edition this year. It may actually start around the time when this podcast would be aired. So I also wanted to encourage anyone to take part in the survey. It's like a really great source of feedback, and the results are often a lot of companies also look at those results, and specifically companies that work in open source and contribute. Also, people at Meta consider those results
that's good to know. It really it goes back to the source. Like people at Meta do look at these results.
Of course, yeah, and it kind of helps directing efforts towards the areas that are most demanding. And well, it's all like this is like really one of the biggest kind of sources for feedback, and when it comes to React Native as a whole, and for the whole ecosystem. So more voices we have, then they will be definitely heard. So it's important for people to participate in the survey. So we've been running that for
good to know.
We've been running that for the past 2 years, and the third edition is going to be this year. So the results will be likely published at the beginning of next year. But 2 years in a row, the dev tooling was on the very top of the issues people have with React Native. So this kind of confirms what we already kind of suspected. And so there's been not enough focus on this area for since React Native started. So I was when React Native as a product started, I was actually on the founding team of React Native for Android at Meta. It was Facebook back then. And many years ago, and the product started, as an internal project, and then built a prototype, and then eventually it got open source. But there has never been a focus on tooling, because it kind of the project inside in React for web, so web already had a lot of tools.
The tooling,
So when we build it for Android, for iOS, for Android, we thought that people would just use the Android or iOS tools. But this isn't very convenient, especially given that a lot of people who come to React Native, they come with a web background, right? And
the tooling in Android Studio can be very confusing at first glance. It's tough to find your way around it.
Exactly. And so people who actually now work React Native, they don't only need to learn React Native as a framework, because it's not exactly the same as web. So even if they have React experience working on web, it doesn't mean that they will be immediately fluent in React Native. So they need to learn React Native, but they also need to learn a little bit of iOS development and a little bit of Android development. So there hasn't been a lot of initiatives investing in tooling. We had Flipper a while ago. It's discontinued right now. I mean, it kind of is being actually used, but for native development now, it's not really focused on React Native. And of course, Expo has been investing in that space a lot and simplifying the way you use the CLI, the services that they have, the hosting services for building and doing stuff. So that improved situation a lot. But one thing that was, in my opinion, missing was the IDE, basically. So the integrated development environment, which when you start with iOS, you have Xcode. When you start with Android, you have Android Studio. You can also use Android Studio when you build Flutter apps. So every single framework you can think of, it has its own kind of IDE, except for web, really, because web for web people have like tons of different setups, and this kind of is also like one of the issue that we're now facing, that in React Native work we really also kind of deal with that legacy of many different setups that people were trying to use to develop or adjust their projects to their needs. So that's the state of tooling and kind of the main motivation behind us starting the project.
So do you remember like one specific moment when you felt like, oh my God, this is too much, we have to create an IDE? Or was it more like a death by 1,000 paper cuts that like it mounted over time?
Yeah, I think it was the latter. Yeah, I've never. I kind of started with just looking at the existing options that are already there for native development. So my background is actually in like Android and iOS native development. So I also like occasionally have some projects in that area and have a chance to play with the tool, like see how they evolve over time. And what are the current trends? And when Swift UI came out, I really liked the Swift UI preview, so I thought that it's kind of very convenient to have something like that just next to the editor, and kind of wanted to see if this is something that we could build for React Native, and that's kind of how it started. So I started building, the ways of embedding the simulator inside of the editor, and then kind of the first idea was to actually just have the preview functionality. So preview is one of the options now you have in the IDE, but it is not like far from being the main one now. So we can smoothly
go into features of Radon IDE, since you mentioned the preview. You're saying it's not like the main thing, but for me, I of course tried it out. I clicked around, and the preview is a game changer for me. It was incredible to see everything like right in my IDE. So this is a feature that I loved a lot. And then inspect. I mean, this is something that we've been missing in React Native. And actually, a question I have noted down is what sets Radon IDE apart. But once I started playing around with it, that was my feeling that inspect by element is definitely something that's been missing in this space, and that really sets Radon apart from any other tooling that we have. But what other features are there?
Yeah, definitely the inspecting thing is also like one of my favorite ones. Especially we have this option when you can right click element, and then it shows you like a tiny drop down with like element hierarchy up from that element through different parents of the component up the component hierarchy. So this is something I use like very often, and I'm also had this now have this muscle memory where when I actually try to also right click on web when I work with React Web, and then I see the browser context menu, and I'm disappointed. So I got
this is not what I expected.
Yeah, so I got used to having that, and it's a very convenient thing to jump. So of course, I love the tools that Radon IDE has. They exist already, so they are kind of the implementation based on like the existing mechanism behind React DevTools or the React debugger. So that kind of stuff, we try to bring it under the single roof and have an integrated solution that also kind of is tied to the text editor. So I think this is the biggest advantage of using it, that you actually have all of those features are kind of configured for you. They're available under like a few clicks or maybe a shortcut. And then it's also like tied to the editor. So starting from so one of the one of the things that we kind of set as a vision for the IDE was to make it very seamless for people to use. So this actually follows our experience with Flipper. Not sure if you've used Flipper in the past, but Flipper was like every
I have
single
used it.
so every single version with Flipper was like you had to change something in the make files.
Yeah, definitely. It was so flimsy. Yeah.
So it was not only just a problem when you actually tried to use that and you had to connect, reconnect, whatever, find the device. So that was like one aspect of the process, but another aspect was just that you actually need to configure that on the build process and had to comment it out for release builds such that it's not included there. And every single React Native update you were making, you actually need to deal with those Flipper configs that were just somewhere put in between your make files.
And at some point it was like, it's so much work to use this tool that I just don't feel like using this tool. I mean, it's great if I have a ticket and I have to do a flame graph. Okay, I'll hook it up. I'll try to remember all the steps, but I wouldn't use it in my like day to day because it was a little bit annoying.
Yeah, exactly. So the promise that we kind of now are following is for the IDE to just work. So you take your project. And you open it in Radon IDE, and it launches, and you can use all the features that we have. You don't need to change anything in your configuration. You don't need to install any packages. So the only thing is that you need to have the extension installed in VS Code or Cursor, and that's it. So we are not quite there yet in terms of we are not able to support certain setups, and this mainly stems from the fact that there's just so many different ways people are changing the templates, like adjusting the React Native to their needs. Maybe they have their own kind of semi frameworks that they have built for like a brownfield project. So that type of stuff is something we're not yet able to support. But across different versions, we already are pretty confident, and then we have managed to achieve these results where you can basically clone a GitHub repo with like a React Native app, and then open it in Radon IDE, and we'll build for you and just do everything for you. You don't need to even think whether it's using Yarn or NPM or whatever package manager, whether you should install pods or not install pods. So taking that pain from you, making because there are also many different setups, and one of the things I do often is that I'm joining some project just to consult for a couple of hours, just to go through the source and try to
jumping in real quick.
And then I just open it in Radon, and it works. I don't need to go through the README and see like which steps I need to run to just get this project running. So it's very nice when I can just have it under a single tool that just does everything for me that I need. I would actually need to read and manually execute.
Yeah, exactly. And that really is a big difference, that Radon feels like an IDE. It doesn't feel like a tool that you need to like implement in your app or do whatever, change configuration. It's a tool that you have in your IDE, and like you have all the setup that's already done. So that feels very comfortable. And the installation, I did it a couple of days ago. So you just download an extension to your VS Code. But that would be like because we've been just saying compliments so far. So let's try with the tougher question a little bit, because so far it's an extension for VS Code. Do you have plans for like people who maybe don't use VS Code?
So currently we don't really have capacity to work on that. So VS Code was like our preferred choice from the start, because like it's a most popular text editor,
definitely, yeah.
And also now with Cursor. So Cursor is like a fork of VS Code with like enhanced AI capabilities, and it also has it supports the same kind of extension format. So the IDE just naturally work there without any issues. But so a lot of the components, and especially the things that are like very deeply integrated with the operating system, with communicating with simulator emulators, so those are kind of abstracted away from VS Code. So potentially something that we could reuse when we decided to integrate with other tools. But currently we don't have any capacity to really work on that.
but maybe in the future, like you're not close to it.
Yeah, of course. So I'm monitoring all different options. I've really I recently been looking into this. There's this new, or it's not like very new, but it's like a text editor that has become a little bit more popular in the past couple of months. It's called ZED.
Yeah, I saw.
Yeah.
I mean, Dan Abramov posted about it on Blue Sky, so I bet that's gonna bump the popularity of that editor as well a little bit.
Exactly. So we've been monitoring the progress on that. It's actually Rust based, and a lot of our stuff that we've written that integrates with the operating system is actually also written in Rust. So that kind of maybe in the future once that has like a some more advanced extension mechanism, and then it may be possible. So at the moment, it only allows for a language server type of extensions. So just things that would, kind of.
I mean, I understand the choice about VS Code, since, as you said, it's like the most popular IDE, but as well, it permits those extensions, like the options to build extensions for VS Code are pretty much endless. So you can build anything.
Yeah, VS Code is pretty good, but it also has its own limitations. So the biggest one is that the extension, they need to be web-based. So the only way to actually have a visual kind of, like the whole VS Code is actually an Electron app already, and the extension that are visual. So the tab that is there, this is like a iframe. It's embedded in Electron, right? So it has a really nice model around managing sub-processes. So the extension is a sub-process that talks with the iframe, and there are also like debuggers, also a separate process inside of VS Code. So the extension system in VS Code is designed really good, and it allows for many things. But for the visual part, we're kind of tied to just having an iframe, which makes it pretty tricky to do the device streaming there. So that was the biggest kind of challenge, and I would expect in other editors this shouldn't be as challenging there, and potentially could be done much more efficiently.
Yeah, but you did figure it out, and there is a simulator. You can have your simulator in your IDE. So going back to the features of Radon, another thing that I liked a lot were errors, because you have errors that like immediately you can go to the terminal and see the error, even the aesthetics. I honestly do enjoy like a well polished product where everything is clear and I can immediately understand what's going on and go and try to fix my issue. That's another feature that I liked a lot. I'm curious, did you have like a design team for this?
Yeah,
for Radon?
Yeah, we have designers, but for things like that, we just try to follow the like well-established patterns. So the errors, for example, they just use the same mechanism as the debugger does. So normally when you have a debugger that is kind of integrated into your text editor, when the error happens, it doesn't show you the error or only show you the error. It will appear in the console, but then it will also just pause in the debugger, so you can actually get to the right line at this moment when the error happens. So you just open that file where the error occurred, and we kind of integrated that on two levels. So we not only have debugger connected for your app. So when the error happens inside your app, you will get the exception. It would stop in the editor. But we also integrated debugger with Metro. So when there is a bundler error and it just cannot parse certain files, it will also result in the same problem. So it will jump to the right file where there is like a bundler error or like syntax error or whatever. So this kind of integrating two processes at the same time, and I think it's really handy when you are making. Mistakes happen, of course, so errors happen, I think it's very convenient to be redirected immediately to the place where these errors happening, where you can fix this immediately, and then take advantage of fast refresh, just having it updated or reloaded automatically.
Yeah. So are there any other features that we should mention? We talked about inspecting, about errors. Is there something else that you feel strongly about and you want to talk about in the Radon features?
Yeah. So one thing that is very helpful in many settings when you specifically work with a bigger team and you have other people committing changes to your app is that we have this feature where we monitor for changes that would require you to rebuild the app because they perhaps change something, like change native code or whatever. And in that instance, we monitor for this type of changes whenever it's necessary. When you, like, for example, do git pull, you pull new updates from the repo, and what I would get into very often is that I would just try to use the app or reload it, and then start getting random errors that would just be due to the fact that that someone else updated this library and it tries to use methods that just don't exist. And those problems,
you try to follow the methods and you waste time because you should just rebuild.
And those problems would typically result in me going to the terminal back, killing everything I have, then clearing all the caches that I have, and then waiting another 5 minutes for everything to rebuild and then update. And since we can track the updates that are happening inside of the IDE, because we know like what sources are being pulled in and what sources are part of your project, we can with a very good confidence tell what exactly needs to be rebuilt and what needs to be cleared, what caches to clear, etc. So this is very convenient. So when you pull now and we detect that something native changed, you will get this banner that shows on the very top of the device, and it says, "Hey, it's very likely that you need to rebuild now." And you can click a button there, and it will just rebuild it for you. And I think it's very handy. So that's one of those small things that may make a difference.
Make a big difference. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So of course, another thing as far as features is the integrated debugger. So with the new debugger, it's now much more convenient to use at least even use the debugger in React Native, like with 76. But
it's not like use better. You can actually use it.
Yeah, you can actually use it now. Although, so the debugger you have in React Native is not integrated with the editor, so you cannot have breakpoints put in next to your code. You just put them in like a sources tab in the DevTools app, right? And of course, this is already like a big step forward. But when you have it in editor, it's in my opinion more convenient, because you typically, when you have breakpoints, you don't just want to follow the flow of your code, but you also want to make adjustments there, right? So this is convenient to have that next to your code editor, and when you use Radon, you just have everything set up for you. You don't need to do anything else. Just like open the project, and then you will have the debugger there. And on top of that, we of course also support the old debugger. So if you cannot yet upgrade to 76, it will work, and it works It works in like we put a lot of effort in making it work more stable. The old debugger. So like, for example, things like when you reload JavaScript, and the old debugger would just like drop all the breakpoints, and you couldn't actually use them even though they were set. So things like that, they're just handled in Radon right now. So we're taking advantage of all the improvements in new debugger, but we also support the old version if you're not yet able to upgrade. What else? So we have a lot of different buttons. So when you use Radon, you have this kind of new the whole panel, where like the main part of the panel is of course the device screen. And you can just use it as a normal device. So this is actually like just streamed simulator where you launch the app.
And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I like the way to choose your simulator. It's very easy, like creating new simulators and like choosing which one you want to use. That
exactly.
Works very nicely.
So that's kind of another aspect is when people build for React Native, it's oftentimes they would just use like whatever is easier for them to get started, and they would use they would run it on iOS because it's more convenient. It just launches and then you have everything working. And for Android, you will need to go through Android Studio, install some stuff, and then get it launched somehow, and only then to test things on Android emulator. some additional friction. It's not a lot of friction, but
there are additional steps.
Additional steps for you to do. And with Radon, if you want to test it on different device, you just like use this switch in the panel, and it just launches this other emulator for you, and you can have kind of the same state of your app, and within like a matter of 2 clicks. So that's very convenient, and I think it's important because people tend to test only one operating system very often, which then like results in many regressions in Android.
Exactly, and they feel comfortable. Okay, it's looking good on my phone. It's fine, and I happen to have an iPhone or whatever.
Exactly.
I have a MacBook, so I'm testing on my iOS, and then on Android it looks like crap, and you're surprised.
So one other thing that people tend to do when they test, because it's difficult to verify it under different settings, is like, for example, what if someone has a bigger font size set for their phone, which is something that like a lot of people actually do. They change the light mode, for example, to dark mode, or they use those different modes, or they use different text size settings, or maybe. So what we have in Radon is we have this device settings tab where you can easily adjust those settings on the fly. So there's this also available under a single tab. So so we can really make it any easier. And I think it's important for people also to test this under those different settings. So this way we kind of hope that people will also try using those different settings and see how their app behaves on when someone have bigger text set or whatever.
Exactly. So when I first saw Radon, I thought this is going to be mostly great for newcomers, because there's a lot of friction setting up your environment. So with this tool, you can very easily have everything set up. But once I started using it, there are so many features that even when you're an experienced React Native developer and you're comfortable, you already have your simulator. Like you have 10 simulators set up, you're fine. You have your thing going on. But then this still makes your work easier with all the settings like in one place. And as you said, like font size changes, like switching between simulators.
Yeah, one other thing that not a lot of people know about is that when you have like an input text, for example, and you use React Native and run it on the iOS simulator. And what's in that having is that you typically have this option checked with the stock iOS simulator to have a hardware keyboard connected, which makes it so that you can actually use your keyboard to type in things in the text input field without using the virtual keyboard and then tapping on the individual keys using your mouse, which isn't very convenient when you want to type in something, right? But what happens when you are using it on iOS is that when you have the hardware keyboard connected, it doesn't even show the virtual keyboard. So a very frequent mistake that I see people make is that they kind of assume that this keyboard takes up a lot of the screen space, right?
They forget it will exist on the screen.
They forget that it really exists, and they only realize that once they start testing this on a real device. That, you can tap this text field, but you don't really know. Maybe there is some important information under the text field that you want to be visible during that time, and you just don't account for this. So we actually find a way to overcome that in Radon. And now when you use text input, we always show the virtual keyboard as it was the real device.
Oh, nice.
And you can still use your normal keyboard to type in things. So that's one small thing that I think not a lot of people would notice, but I think it's going to be helpful for avoiding those type of mistakes.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like something that you won't notice because you will get like less problems.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like a solution that works seamlessly and like invisibly. We know why this is cool for developers. Do you think we could try to convince some business people? Because we're talking here today because Radon is going from beta to commercial. So there's probably going to be some developers asking their managers, please buy the license for me. So let's try and find some arguments to convince those business people to pay for the license.
Yeah, I think.
Why should they?
So Radon, the main point of it is to just improve the developer velocity. So people are, there are developers who, would use a GitHub Copilot, for example, which accelerates, the development process, but some others would decide not to because it's, costs money or whatever. And I think the situation here is just very similar. So we are building software that improves the developer velocity, and tries to take away some of the common pains when developing for React Native, in general tries to makes life easier for the developers. So
happier devs.
Given it works okay on a given project setup, which we actually have like a compatibility table in the docs that you should definitely check before you buy a license. So we recommend checking that. We also have like a free trial that you can use to verify that it works okay on your setup. But if the stars align and an IDE works okay in a given setup, which I hope we're covering now majority of setups that are kind of standard Expo, React Native, different versions from 73 to 77 now, and
nice.
Expo from 50, like different setups with Expo, with Dev Client, EAS, Expo Go, and that sort of stuff. So this is like a development tool, as this similar to other tools that a lot of companies are already buying a license for, and similarly trying to give out like a velocity boost basically, and make things more convenient for people. So we do have some plans on adding more features. So of course we will be adding features over time, and we have a roadmap set that we will be also publishing in the next following weeks. But there are also some features that will be like specifically targeting teams, where we, for example, can collect some information about like people, how people use the apps, how often they rebuild, how much time they spend on waiting on Xcode to compile their projects. So those are all those type of information may be useful in making decisions about upgrading your laptop, or
your your setup.
Or maybe switching to setups where you can rely on things like AIS, for example, for doing the builds, and then like taking away the need of actually building native code on local machines for people.
Yeah. Okay. So to sum up, business people, if you buy the license, you'll probably make your developers happy, or React Native developers happy, and maybe you will avoid some potential errors in the future, like this error that you mentioned, like the UI issue with the keyboard that sort of appears once you go to market. There's probably many more that we can't even like think of off the top of our heads, but I bet there are many more. So the product is in beta. It's been in beta since May 2024.
Yeah,
yes?
So we actually had like a short internal invite-only beta program. We started the thing in March. It was running for 3 months, and then in May we make it open, so anyone could actually install it.
What was the road like to the commercial version? What did you focus on from beta to the commercial version?
Yeah, so one of the biggest aspects was just on the stability of it, such that it really works in a way that it doesn't get into your way very often, or at least, I mean, it shouldn't really get in your way at any point. So it should just work.
So it shouldn't be like Flipper 2.0.
Yeah, exactly. And so this was the most challenging thing, I think, to do, because of a variety of different setups, as I was mentioning earlier. Like people have React Native CLI projects, they have Expo projects, and Expo could be Dev Client, could be Expo pre-build, could be Expo Go. So you have different versions on top of that. We have two different debugger implementation now to communicate with. So there are a lot of moving parts, and there are also a lot of different project types. And on top of that, like React Native has never been very opinionated on the project structure. So when you created React Native project, you actually get a template, and you are free to change it whatever way you like. You can install lots of different plugins, additions that that may get in a way to what Radon is doing, because Radon needs to plug into your application process. It uses some different mechanisms to do that. There are also so all those different setups, they make things more difficult. So things like supporting monorepos, different setups of monorepos. So those were like a very tricky things to solve, and we still are not supporting some of the popular ways of doing the of monorepo setups. So this was kind of the biggest pain. And that's why we kind of opened the beta program. We had this also supporters program where you could actually purchase a supporters license, and then we had like a close group of people. And so some of them we worked very closely on getting their setup fixed and improving it for everyone, of course. So that was a very helpful process that we went through, and now we're at the point where with a lot of confidence you can get like a random app that exists and then uses React Native and open it in Radon, and it should work.
It will work.
Yeah. So
you sort of started talking about something that I wanted to ask in my follow-up question about community engagement. I feel that React Native community is a pretty active one, and people have their opinions, that they have their setups. So it's interesting to know that you had this closed beta. How were people able to get into that program?
So for the closed beta, we just have like a invite form, so people had to fill that in, and then we were allowing people in as we had capacity to support them, and also depending on like how many issues we'll have from people. So depending on that, we will let in as many people as we really could.
And so
now, Yep. Go ahead.
So in the future, if you have any other like super tools, everybody look out for like invite forms if you want to get in on the closed beta.
Yeah. So in some instances, like the libraries that we build at Software Mention, in some of those instances, we do have some closed group of beta testers that we know are active in certain areas and have many ideas, and we can get very valuable feedback from them. So this is often when we kind of try to reach first through our internal channels, and only then get like a kind of invite program. But I think we don't really plan to do that for other things, at least in the near future. So, but I recommend to follow the profiles of Software Mention, or check on GitHub or X or Blue Sky.
Yeah.
We
and
do post.
You're pretty active on Discord as well, right? You have like a pretty active Discord server.
Yeah, we have Discord, which is now a few thousand people, and it's pretty active. So there's a lot of going on there. So each project that we have has a separate channel, and that goes also beyond React Native, because Software Mention is not only about React Native. So we have some also open source multimedia projects. If you're interested in that, and we also have channels that are focusing on discussing that. We also have a pretty big now AI branch, so we work with PyTorch.
Nice.
And we just recently even launched the Executorch React Native library. So there are different topics being discussed on our Discord. So definitely invite anyone to join.
Yeah. Were there any unexpected challenges while we were building Radon? This is the question. Were there any unexpected challenges? Or was it like smooth sailing? VS Code extensions are fine. You have your team.
Definitely. There were many challenges. It's difficult to judge which were expected and which. I mean, most of those things are really unexpected, but you kind of expect that you will have something unexpected. So that's maybe
that. I get that.
Yeah, I mean the biggest challenges has always been the streaming and how to get that in the inside of the VS Code. So this is something that we are still actively working and improving. Basically to make it as performant as possible. And of course, we're just working with some limitations that it needs to be embedded in a web page.
Yeah.
Really. So that's one serious limitation, because you just can't use any system APIs to access some shared memory where you have the graphical buffer from the simulator. So that type of stuff is just not possible. I think apart from that, I can't really recall something that I would call really unexpected. I mean, so another thing that we kind of decided to work towards was integrating this with other platforms, so specifically having Radon for Windows and Linux, and I'd say this is also like a very challenging area, because we just don't have people who use those operating systems. We're working with Radon.
Right.
So
I'm curious, is it really possible to have like Radon on a Windows machine and have an iOS simulator in Radon on your Windows machine?
No. So we actually have version of Radon, but you can only use it for Android now.
Yeah, okay.
But the way the streaming is set up, it actually allows you to kind of have the simulator on, like, it can be somewhere in the network, so it can be like a cloud-based simulator. So this is perhaps something
nice.
that we may consider adding, but we just don't yet understand like how big of a market that is and how people use that. We don't So the big advantage that we have.
Not too many React Native devs working on Windows out
so
there,
when we build open source libraries that Software mentioned, things like reanimated gesture handler, screens, SVG, all that type of stuff. The good thing and the great thing about this, the great thing about this is that we are actually also using that. So we're kind of using what we're building, which gives us very close feedback loop on the tools that we're making. So we both understand the domain and the needs to build specific library, or like how we can make it fill real needs of people who are building a product, because we have tons of different clients that we work with at Software Mention. So
you have people building real products.
So we have that, and with IDE we also have people using it, but all of them are using it on Mac. so which makes it very challenging for us to actually even approach Windows. And I would be curious to get someone who is actively working with React Native on Windows or Linux. Maybe we should look up for people who would be willing to collaborate on that, and that this way we could get something that is up to the similar quality and works on Windows, because we just don't have people testing that, and that makes it very difficult for us to build it.
To work with it, definitely. Yeah. So at Software Mention, I assume most people use Radon, like in everyday work, or is it a bad assumption?
No, we're not there yet. So only recently, some of the recent versions are only stable enough for people to pick up. So we have some people using it, and we will be hopefully expanding that. We want to also use Radon for things like workshops, specifically like the beginner level workshops, because the tool is like really convenient for people who don't really have a ton of expertise with
friendly.
We don't have a lot of expertise in native development. As I was mentioning earlier, you don't have to learn iOS development or Android to just get started with it. So for that aspect, I think it's a very good tool, and especially for people coming from the web. So one thing I remember, we had this discussion, I think it was last year at the React Contributor Summit. There was this question, like how we can make React Native to be 100x bigger, how this can be achieved. And so one of the ways is to have more people who use React on web, which is like this around this time is much bigger, to bring them to work with React Native. And the biggest obstacle, apart from just motivation, and if it's needed for the projects. But the biggest obstacle is really the learning curve. So they know React, but it's not. Yeah. So just knowing React, it sets you up to a certain point that you at least you don't need to learn React. But I think learning React is much easier than learning, using iOS tooling, for example.
So definitely. I've had people talk with me who are React devs, and they said, "Oh my God, you're working with React Native." I tried it, but after 2 days of trying to set up my environment, I gave up. So it's definitely something for them. And I'm sorry I cut you off. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
So just making this learning curve a little less steeper. I think it's something that kind of contributes to this goal to getting more people use React Native. Of course, another one that a lot of companies, Meta included, works towards is to get kind of more web-friendly APIs to people, such that they don't really need to use React Native view primitives and that type of stuff. So projects like React Strict DOM and stuff like that. This is also kind of a big contributor to achieving this goal.
Yeah, and you mentioned Meta, and I want to circle back to something you mentioned before. You worked at Facebook at Meta, and you participated in creating React Native. So you lived in the States for a while.
I lived in the States, but a very short time. I was actually mainly based in London, so I lived in London for 2 years. So when I worked at React Native, the kind of native team was based in London. So we kind of have this division where iOS, Android native teams were in London, and then the JavaScript part of React and all the modifications, because the first version of React Native, they didn't actually use React directly. There was a fork of React, and that was used to work with React Native.
Okay, how was the atmosphere there? We were building something totally new. Nobody knew if it's gonna work out. I'm curious, what was working at the beginning?
Yeah, it was very exciting. And I was also a big fan of this idea when I first heard of that internally, because I had native iOS Android experience at that moment, and I also worked with React, which was open source a year before. So I knew all the kind of needed bits to start building React Native, and then I thought that why haven't I thought about that myself, and then to do that, and sort of then I got lucky enough to be able to join the team and work with some excellent people on that. So it was a fun experience.
Yeah. So that's really great, and thank you for that from me, and probably for all the from all the other people who work with React Native. Thank you for creating this great thing. I think if there's anything else you would like to add about Radon, maybe the name, because that's also probably something interesting behind that. Why is it Radon?
Yeah, so when we started the project, we just weren't very creative about the name. So naming things is the most difficult problem in computer science.
It is, and it was the first name was a React Native
IDE.
Wasn't it?
So when we published the first version of it was called React Native IDE, which is the least creative name that you could think of, and that was me who thought about that name. So the new name is actually. I kind of participated in figuring out the new name, but the idea was by Kacper Kapuszczak, who works at Software Mention with us, and he's also helping with Radon IDE project, and that was his idea, and I think it's pretty fun and a little bit nerdy, because Radon kind of is so it's Radon because it's kind of a chemical element, right? It's an element, and kind of. This way is kind of associated with the atomic theme of React. So in React you have the atom logo, and React Native IDE, which was the previous name, we already had a logo which was kind of a atom, but it has a like a screw inside of it, which kind of makes it more try to associate it with like the fact that it's a tool, like of some
it's
sort.
A tool. Yeah.
So that was the idea behind the logo. So we wanted to have something that will be still related to the atomic nature of React. So Radon is a good name because of that. But it also the symbol of Radon is RN, which is the shorthand for React Native. So that's another kind of addition to that, and of course we have the Polish accent and all of that because radon is a radioactive element, and it decays to polonium, which is the element that was discovered by Marie Curie. And of course
Skłodowska. Yeah. I went to university by her name, so
nice.
She's my personal hero. I have her on like my Twitter background, and she's like one of the I'm gonna fact check this, but I think she's the one of very few people who got a Nobel Prize in 2 categories, because she got one in physics and one in chemistry. So that's our Polish women accent. Well, thank you very much.
Of course, the name on its own, it's that it was named Polonium because of Poland.
Yeah,
so
for
that's
Poland.
kind of like with that.
It's awesome. So I think we're ready to wrap up. Thank you, Krzysztof, very much for being here and talking with us about Radon, about React Native tooling, and all the great features that the tool that your company has created can give us all and make our lives easier. So thanks for being here, and I want to thank the audience for listening. And everybody subscribe to our newsletter if you want to learn more about the podcasts that are coming up. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks.